Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's get started with Week 20's Word Nerd Wednesday. Now, we've been reading a lot about the Orcs lately, Azog for one. But over on the PPP, I've had enough of Shagrat to last the rest of my days. Frodo and Sam could say the same, I'm sure. So why don't we take a few minutes today to look at the Orc words? We'll start with Uruk, since that's how Shagrat refers to himself. Now, as you might guess, this word is related to the term Uruk-hai, which you saw a lot of in Season 5 of the Prancing Pony podcast as we got into The Two Towers, Book 3. Uruk-hai is a term generally associated with that new breed of orcs that are faster, stronger, and immune to the daylight. But in reality, the suffix hai just means people, so Uruk-hai means the orc people. In fact, other races of evil creatures also have the suffix hai added in black speech, such as the Olog-hai, the troll people. And although the movies left us with very powerful and gruesome scenes of Saruman breeding these Uruk-hai in some kind of fleshy mud pods, the reality is quite different. First, there's really not as clear a distinction in the book between Uruk-hai and other types of orcs. Uruk-hai are greater foes than regular orcs, but it doesn't seem to be a term that's limited just to Saruman's orcs, or to half-orcs bred with men. For example, there's a reference to the Black Uruks of Mordor in the chapter The Bridge of Khazad-dûm, which are described as large and evil in comparison with the common orc. Appendix F explains, Orc is the form of the name that other races had for this foul people, as it was in the language of Rohan, that is, Old English. In Sindarin, it was Orc. Related, no doubt, was the word Uruk of the Black speech, though this was applied as a rule only to the great soldier orcs that at this time issued from Mordor and Isengard. So there's some of that ambiguity. Uruk is explained as simply the word for orc in the Black speech, but by convention, it's applied in the Third Age only to those soldier orcs from Isengard or Mordor, as opposed to, kitchen orcs, logistics orcs. Now, we certainly see a difference with Snaga, which means slave. Shagrat calls one of the lesser orcs that, and so does Ugluk in The Two Towers, which is why I'm not entirely convinced that it's the name of either of those orcs. The word means slave, and I just think that's what the Uruks call those lesser orcs. Now, it's worth noting that all of these names are related, according to that note from the appendix. Rohirric, or Old English orc, Sindarin orc, and Black speech Uruk. Of course, there are cognate names for them in other languages. As Sean once said, since he actually has a copy of it, Parma Eldalamberon 17 tells us that the creatures were unknown to the Eldar in Valinor. There is therefore no genuine Quenya name for them, which makes sense. But after the Noldor came back to Middle-earth, they did borrow the Sindarin name into Quenya as Orko. There's also a true Westron form given of Orca, and it seems to be Urku in Adunaic. In Kuzdul, or Dwarvish, it's something called Ruks, I think. It's R-U-K-H-S. I'm not sure. Maybe it's Ruks. I'm not 100% sure. The thing is, they really are almost all the same word. There's hardly any variation from language to language. And this fact has been observed by Nicholas Burns, whose essay, The Stones and the Book, in Jason Fisher's collection, Tolkien and the Study of His Sources, examines this word and says, the word seems to be the same in all languages, repugnance not inspiring terminological variety. Big thanks to Sean Marchese for tracking that one down. Now, back in episode 59 of the PPP, Sean and I talked about the Old English history of the word orc and its likely relationship to a Latin word orcus, a name for the god of the underworld. But today I want to talk about how Tolkien appropriated that word and fit it into his in-universe linguistic history, because that's a lot more fun. According to the Etymologies in The Lost Road, an early linguistic text of Tolkien's, all of these words come from a primitive Quendian root, orok, O-R-O-K, which means goblin. Easy enough. There's also another similar sounding root in that text, ruk, which means demon, and is the source of Quenya rauko, Sindarin raug or rog, as in Valraukar or Balrog. Now, I only bring up that other root, ruk, because in a later text published in the War of the Jewels, Tolkien says these words are actually all from the same root. Quote, for the various shapes taken by the servants of Melkor, and the terror that they inspired, the element chiefly used in the ancient tongue of the elves appears to have been ruku. In all the Eldarin tongues, and it is said in the Avarin also, there are many derivatives of this stem having such ancient forms as Ruk, Rauk, Uruk, Urku, and so on. Now, of course, that's the later text, so it seems that Tolkien's final idea on this was that words such as Orc, Uruk, and even Balrog were all related. They were all derived from the same primitive Elvish linguistic root. Although, being Tolkien, he's still very cagey about the connection between the Elvish words and the Old English orc. At the end of this essay, he says, the word used in translation of Quenya Urko, Sindarin orc, is orc. But that is because of the similarity of the ancient English word orc, evil spirit or bogey, to the Elvish words. There is possibly no connection between them. The English is now generally supposed to be derived from Latin orcus. Sure, Professor. He also says that another word for the creatures in another tongue of men may also be related. The word for orc in the now forgotten tongue of the Druidine in the realm of Gondor is recorded as being in the plural Gorgun. This is possibly derived ultimately from the Elvish words. So, yeah, many of the most common words for many of the nasty things in Middle-earth are apparently related. Folks, that is it for Orc, Uruk, and even Balrog, it seems, and for today's Word Nerd Wednesday. But come back next week as we wander the wide, wild, wonderful world of words weekly on Wednesdays. And if there's a word you want to know more about, please let me know by emailing barliman@theprancingponypodcast.com. Please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, a bonus weekly episode, and a whole lot more. And finally, join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for Third Age Thursday. If you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Please follow or subscribe in your podcast apps, and follow @Tolkien Times on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.